Good morning. Thank you so much for having joined us for another post-cabinet media briefing here in the studios of ABS Television, ABS Radio. Of course, cabinet having met yesterday, here with us on a Thursday morning to walk us through some of the key decisions taken by the country's executive, Chief of Staff in the Prime Minister's office, Ambassador Lionel Hurst. Our Minister for Information, Honorable Melford Nicholas, is unavoidably absent as he is, of course, traveling today to the Sister Isle for major development. There, over to Ambassador Hurst. We'll have questions later.
Good morning, Mr. Burford, and good morning to your many audiences, wherever they might be. Good morning also to the reporters whom I know are online and eagerly awaiting the opportunity to examine the notes and to receive answers from me. I am delighted after more than 9 years to have continued to carry out this process of exposing the inner workings of government to the people of Antigua and Barbuda. Transparency is one of the watchwords of the Gaston Brown administration. No other administration having exercised in the same way the ability of reporters to examine officials who sit in the cabinet of Antigua and Barbuda. We regret the absence of Minister Nicholas this morning. Nevertheless, before I open myself to questions, I wanted to bring the reporter's attention to 2 items in the report that was submitted early this morning. The first is well-known news by now that the Antigua and Barbuda Union of Teachers has called off the strike which began last week, Tuesday. And so we are delighted that the youth of Antigua and Barbuda will be able to return to their classrooms, have been able to return to their classrooms actually, and that learning is proceeding as we speak. In a couple of weeks, as you know, we are going to have them face the CXC examiners, and therefore we are eager to know that they are back before teachers, because we know there's a connection between the number of hours which a student spends in the presence of his teacher and his likely performance or good performance on the CXC exams. So we applaud Minister Matthew for his leadership. We applaud also the education officials, the Ministry of Education officials, who were very much a part of this exercise. And of course, we applaud the Union of Teachers, the Antigua and Barbuda Union of Teachers, for being reasonable in this particular case. And secondly, I made an error in referring to the former soldier of the Antigua and Barbuda Defense Force as having the rank of major. He actually left with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel Clyde Walker. Right, so I made, the man who used to be a Major Walker, not Clyde, Major Walker, is now, or has been, a Lieutenant Colonel Walker. And he presented a paper which he wrote back in 2005, I believe, in which he proposed a solution to some of the youth violence that we see occurring in Antigua and Barbuda, and that paper will form the basis of a program which will be articulated more clearly by him, well, within the coming weeks, because he's been asked to reformulate the 2005 document. And in the meantime, the Ministry of Legal Affairs will begin drafting some legislation that will allow for this National Youth Service program to get started in Antigua and Barbuda, and also, of course, to ensure that we address the issue of unwarranted violence among young people in Antigua and Barbuda. Having examined these 2 items, I now turn the program over to you, Mr. Burford.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hurst, for those opening comments. Of course, my colleagues on Skype will be asking their questions. There So let me just show you quickly who is on Skype. There is Zoe Carlton, an independent journalist, Robert Emmanuel from Observer Media Group, and there is Nikki Phoenix from ZDK. Let's start this morning with Zoe Carlton, then we'll go to Robert Emmanuel, then to Nikki Phoenix. So Zoe Carlton, good morning. Your questions, please.
Good morning, Garfield. Thank you very much.
Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Hurst. You talked about the voluntary national service. Are there any thoughts that perhaps this could be used for those young offenders, instead of going to prison or other services, they could be drafted into voluntary service?
Yes, in fact, there exists on the law a piece of legislation that allows for the alternative treatment to custodial service or to being locked up. And this piece of legislation will apply so that a magistrate could, instead of sentencing a young offender to time in prison or some other kind of custodial service, could in fact cause that young person to be assigned to the National Youth Service. And the piece of legislation which the Attorney General's office will create will absolutely read exactly like that. And we thank you, Zoe Carlton, for helping us to think through it.
Thank you, sir. You're talking about ages 15 to 21. So would this be an option of when you're at that age at school, you either go on to do the next qualifications or go to the voluntary service corps?
Well, the whole idea is that you get some training from the Antigua and Barbuda Defense Force, and we believe that it will lead to a better man or a better person. And we've seen it in the past, so we know that it works. And we also know that it is virtually cost-free to the Antigua and Barbuda people. So it's worthy on the many, several reasons for us to consider it in the way that we are. Now, it's voluntary, except when you've been assigned it by a magistrate. But the whole idea is that you would spend, nevertheless, time in school and time at the Antigua and Barbuda Defense Force, if it works out that way. That is what is contemplated, because some subject matter just will not be taught by the ABDF personnel. And so you will still rely upon school with the expectation that the young men or young women would conduct themselves in a manner that is befitting. And as a consequence, the non-custodial sentence is intended to act as a kind of an incentive for the youth to behave in a manner that is in accord with the expectations of modern civilization.
So it's a natural transition. Thank you, sir. The reverse osmosis plant, the notes say that a new plant has come to be put next to the Fort James one. Does this plant being designed to overcome the problems that the Fort James plant has encountered?
Not exactly to overcome what is happening at Fort James. What we intend to do at Fort James is to drill some near-shore wells. Mm-hmm. And those wells will fill up with brackish water and no sand, no shells, no debris. And we'll take the water from those wells and desalinate it. At the moment, whenever there is rough weather, what happens is essentially we have to turn the plants off because a significant amount of debris gets sucked into the intake pipe. So we're taking a number of steps to alleviate the challenge posed by rough weather, whether it's in the form of high winds that sometimes cause great big waves, or the movement of the earth, which causes a ground swell. Yeah, whatever the reason for the turbid seas, that cause us to have to turn the plants off, we intend to find a solution to it, because we still need potable water whether the sea is rough or not. And so we're looking for solutions.
So one thing that puzzles me a little, we know what our climate is like, we know what the waters do. Is it not possible to have a reverse osmosis plant that is prepared for these problems?
Well, the plant at Pigeon Point, for example, has several wells dug near the shore that enable the reverse osmosis plant to continue to work during the time that the seas there are rough. And that's what we're really looking for. Now, there is a super filter system that can be attached to these plants, but they cost almost $2 million. So we're looking for a solution that is less costly and one that is just as effective. And so we have come to the conclusion, or the APOA has come to the conclusion, that drilling these near-shore wells is the superior method, given all the factors.
Thank you, sir. We had the recent High Court habeas ruling regarding a person in remand. What are the implications of this for other persons currently being held in remand in the prison?
Well, I believe that you're making reference to the prisoner who, through his lawyer, indicated that the police did not have the authority to bring the charges. Is that the reference you're...
That's the reference, yes.
Yeah, and the Attorney General assured us yesterday that it will not affect those who have already been tried and have been found guilty and have been sentenced to prison.
But what about those who are on remand?
I'm sorry?
What about those who are on remand, sir, awaiting trial?
I did not learn from the Attorney General yesterday about those on remand. But what we do know is that it wouldn't cause the charges to disappear. It is just that the charges, the police would have to have the permission of the DPP to pursue these charges on their own. So that can easily be had, and as a consequence, will not affect the evidence that would be presented to determine whether the defendant is innocent or guilty. It only affects the procedural matter, but not the substance of the matter.
Thank you, sir. If I may ask just one more question, please. Sir Morgan Joseph has assured us that with the investors pulling out of the cancer sector, that there is a plan in place to ensure that cancer patients are not disadvantaged. Could you give us any more information about this, please?
Yeah, well, the Minister of Health informed the Cabinet yesterday that all the patients from Antigua and Barbuda who are reliant upon the cancer center will have an opportunity to travel outside of Antigua and Barbuda at the expense of the Medical Benefit Service, the MBS. They will have an opportunity to travel outside of Antigua and Barbuda in order to receive the treatment. A part of the reason for so doing is that the cost which the seller of the asset is demanding is a little excessive. In fact, very excessive. And so, yes, ma'am?
Sorry, sir, I was just going to say that in some cases, cancer patients reach a state where travelling is incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Is there a plan in place for those people who are unable to travel?
Well, the object is to acquire the center that sits at the foot of the hospital, so that the Antiguans and Barbudans and others from the OECS who wish to use it can continue to do so. The challenge we face, of course, is that the cost which he is demanding is much higher than we're prepared to pay. So we're looking for alternate solutions in the meantime, because we've got to negotiate a cost that is reasonable and that the Antigua and Barbuda government can afford.
Thank you, sir. I pass over to my colleagues.
Yes.
Thank you, Zoe.